First we'll see what is surveying all about. Then we'll see the principles of surveying and also about scales and maps in this video. So surveying is about determining the relative position of points. Suppose let us say you have an empty ground and you want to know the exact position of A. So to know this point, you need to always measure with reference to some point. As such, you might not know the position of A. So you will set out like two reference points. Let us call that B and C. So these points are points which you know for sure. Like if you have a tower at B and C, so that those points will not change with respect to time or over the years. So you can measure the relative position of point A with respect to B and C. Like if you take a linear measurement from B and C, you can locate point A, or you can also use this angle and linear measurements as well. So this is at the ground level. And if you want to know the, like suppose you want to know the height of the building, so then we can try and determine the height of the building without even measuring the height directly, like vertically. You need not measure the height of the building. From here, if you have an instrument from where you can sight the top of the building, and then with a chain or a tape you can measure this horizontal length, and with an instrument you can find the angle also. So with the help of these two measurements you can find the height of this building. And over the years, sometimes what happens is this, in loose soil these buildings might settle. So again, if you measure, you will find a different height of the building. So it will be used for measuring settlements also. So like this, surveying is useful in determining the relative position of points, especially prior to construction of buildings or bridges, etc. So surveying is mainly classified into two types. One is plane surveying and another is geodetic surveying. The major difference is that in case of geodetic surveying, you will take into account the curvature of earth also. But in case of plane surveying, as the name suggests, the curvature of earth is ignored. So whatever we will be seeing later, it will be all about plane surveying only. So if you want to know the difference, like plane surveying can be used comfortably when the surveyed area is like less than 250 square kilometer. Like if you draw an arc, like if you take into account the curvature of earth and draw a line from point A to B for a 18.5 kilometer arc, like if you consider the curvature of earth, and in plane surveying, like you ignore the curvature and draw it, the difference between these lengths of this arc and chord will be like in the range of approximately only 15 mm. So it can be ignored up till a certain point. That's why it's like if the area to be surveyed is less than 250 square kilometer, generally we go only for plane surveying unless we require a very precise measurement. And also if we draw a triangle, and we draw a triangle including this curvature of earth, so this will be a spherical triangle, and if you measure the sum of angles, the difference between the sum of angles in both the cases, like for a area of 195.5 kilometer square, will be just 1 second difference. We know 1 degree is 60 minutes and 1 minute is 60 seconds when we are measuring angles. So for a triangular area of 195.5 kilometer square, the difference in angles is just 1 second between geodetic surveying and plane surveying. Now we'll see about the principles of surveying. So as we saw earlier, we located a point from 2 points of reference. Then there is one more important principle, which is working from whole to part, so that you minimize error accumulation. Like if you have a very big area to be surveyed, so what you do is you work from the whole to smaller sections. So if you want to determine random points here, like some important points which you have to know in the field, so what you do is you start from the whole area, then you go for like smaller triangles, then even more smaller triangles, then you measure the relative position of points. But if you had done the same from part to whole, like you start from here and start drawing these triangles to establish the control points, what happens is if you make a small error in this measurement, so all the other things will get affected. So all the position of points will be wrong. But in case of here, if you make a small error here, it will be only localized, only this area will be affected, but whereas these areas will be surveyed properly. So it is always advisable to work from whole to part in surveying. Now let us see about scale. So first let us understand what is scale. Suppose you are taking some field measurements for a football ground of like length 100 meter and 50 meter width, and you are trying to represent various points in this football ground. So you cannot actually translate into a paper of same sizes, because obviously you cannot have a paper of size 100 meter or 50 meter width. Nowadays it's all computerized, but still for viewing purposes it is better when you scale it down. Like in a plan you can show it this 100 meter length in just 1 meter length. So this will be 1 meter length, and accordingly this will be 0.5 meter width. So what we have done here is we have just scaled down like by 100 times so that it is easy for viewing. So if you want to know the scale, like we have scaled down here 100 times. So the scale here is 1:100. That is 1 meter is 100 meters. So 1 meter on the map or plan is equal to 100 meters on the field. So scale is nothing but length on plan by length on ground. So as you can see here, the length on plan is 1 meter and the length on ground is 100. So it is 1:100. The scale is 1:100. And again in this also we have plan as well as map. So if you have large scale, it is known as a plan. So this will be used for planning and setting out points in the field with the help of the plan, and there will be small scale ones which are known as maps. So these are only for viewing purposes. With the help of maps you won't be designing, it's just for viewing. So you can go for an even smaller scale here. So what we saw here, scale 1/100, that is known as representative fraction, abbreviated as RF. So here we are representing the scale in same units. That is, here also it's in meter and here also it's in meter. So we saw 1 meter in plan is 100 meter in ground. So the representative fraction is 1/100. In case of engineer scale, the units will be different. So here what we do is 1 centimeter equal to x meters on ground. So here we saw that 1 meter is 100 meters. So if you convert this into centimeter, it will be 100 centimeter. So 100 centimeter is 100 meters. So 1 centimeter is 1 meter. So by engineer scale, 1 centimeter in plan is 8 meters on ground. In this case, 1 centimeter in plan is 1 meter on the ground. So that is engineer scale. So when we scale it up or scale it down, we should be very careful. If we make some mistake, it will affect a lot of things in the field also. So the common errors which the surveys face are like, sometimes the one who is using the map or plan will measure the length with the wrong scale than what is given in the plan. And another is shrinkage of map over the years. So if you have a map here which was set out very long ago, over the years this paper might start shrinking. So the scale in the map will be different because the map has shrunk now. So that has to be accounted for. So these are the common errors. So let us see this first case. What happens if suppose engineer estimates the distance on ground as 100 meters for a particular line in a map. So this, when he translated to the ground, it was found to be 100 meters. So for that he used a scale of 1/50 representative fraction. But later he found out that the actual scale given in the map is 1/100. So what will be the actual distance on the ground? So we know that scale is length on map by length on ground. So with a scale of 1/50, he measured the length on ground as 100 meters. So whatever measurement he did was on the map only. So from this, if we find the length on the map, it will be unchanged because length on the map cannot be changed. Only the problem is that he used a wrong scale. So if we find out the length on the map, it will work out as 2 meters. 100/50 is 2 meters. So the length on the map is unchanged. This is 2 meters only. Now if we use the correct scale of 1/100, then we can find the actual distance on the ground. So we have 1/100 equal to 2 by actual distance on the ground which we want. So that will be equal to 200 meters. So the correct length or actual length is wrong scale by correct scale into measured length. So here the wrong scale used was 1/50 divided by correct scale, which has to be used is 1/100 into measured length. How he measured on the ground is 100 meters. If you solve this also, you'll get 200 meters. You can solve by either ways, whichever you remember quickly. So that was about length. If the engineer had measured a area of 100 meters square with the wrong scale, what would be the correct area? So here area is nothing but length into breadth. So here whatever is on the field is scaled down. So area is length into breadth. So whatever the scale is here, it is scaled down in twice. Like length also is scaled down like 100 times and the width also is scaled down like 100 times. So the actual area will be wrong scale by correct square, the whole square into area. Because area is length into breadth, both length and breadth are scaled down. So we have here like 1/50 by 1/100. This was the wrong scale used. You should have used this scale, the whole square into 100 meter square. So this will give you 4 into 100 equal to 400 meter square is the actual area. Now let us also see a case of shrunk map. So on a shrunk map, engineer measured one distance AB as 6 centimeter and some area C as 100 centimeter square. And the scale which was written on the map was 1/1000. So this same distance AB, when they went into the field and checked, like it should have been 6 into 1000, 6000 centimeter, that is 60 meters. But when they checked, it was not 60 meters. They found it as 90 meters in the ground. So what will be the new scale of the map and what will be the area of C on the field? So obviously we cannot be using this scale to find out the area of this C on the field. We should find out the new scale of the map based on actual distance in the ground versus distance in the map. So we know scale equal to length on map by length on ground. So it is very simple here. So the length on map, he measured it as 6 centimeter. and on the ground they are now finding it as 90 meters. So that is 90 into 100 centimeter, that is 6 by 9000. The new representative fraction scale is 6 by 9000, that is 1 by 1500. So this is the new scale of the map. So based on this we can find out the area of C on the ground. So here we are measuring area, so we know that it is usually scaled down twice. So 1 by 1500 square, so that is equal to area on map by area on field. So from this area on map we know it is 100 centimeter square, so we can find out the area of the C on field. So if this is 100 into 1500 the whole square centimeter square. So if you want to convert it into meter square, it is 100 into 1500 square divided by 100 into 100. So this if you solve, you will get the answer as 22,500 meter square. So this is the area of C on the field. There is also one more term in case of shrunk map, that is known as shrinkage factor. So that just measures how much the map has shrunk. So that is equal to shrunk length by actual length. So here when they checked in the ground, like say this 6 centimeters should have been 60 meters. So we have 60 by, and actual length they found out to be 90. So we can say that the map has shrunk like 2 by 3 times. Hello everyone, in this video we will see about theory of errors while surveying and also about weights, like how much weightage is given and about that. So however careful you are, always there is a possibility of error in the measurement which you are doing. Be it an angular measurement or a linear measurement, always there are possibilities of errors and we should try and minimize them as much as possible. Or you should give some relative indication on how accurate that value is. So these errors can be classified into three things. One is mistakes and other two are systematic errors and accidental errors. So mistakes are like blunders. So these happen mostly due to lack of experience from the surveyor. It is like you are noting down the wrong value or you missed a tape length like that. And other human errors which can obviously be avoided if you are very careful. And the next one is systematic error. So that could be due to the fault in the instrument itself. So suppose you are measuring a linear distance, like you are using chain to measure a distance from point A to point B and you are using a 30-meter chain. But actually the length of the chain when you found was like 31 meters instead of 30 meters. So this is a very basic example of instrumental error. Some are unnoticeable also. So these are usually cumulative in nature because they will be of the same sign and like they will be of the same magnitude and in the same direction. So they keep on adding up. So this can be avoided by properly calibrating the equipment. Calibrating the equipment means like you should find out the actual length of the chain here and use them or go for a chain which has exactly 30 meters. So the last one is the accidental error. So this happens with, suppose the same case you are measuring from point A to point B and you are using a chain and the chain kind of sags. So this distance what you wanted to measure will be different from the length which you have measured. And sometimes you will apply like too much tension, like you will pull it too tightly or there could be variation due to temperature, etc. So those come under accidental error. And these usually can be either positive or negative. They are compensative in nature. And these errors usually follow normal distribution. So the deviation from actual value either in positive or negative direction, like if you see this graph here, if the deviation is very less, that is more probable to occur, that the frequency of errors in small magnitude will be highly probable. But in case of large errors, instead of like A to B, instead of 150 meter, you are measuring it as 180 meters. There is a very large error. So the probability of occurrence of that large error is very less. So it is important to determine the precision of the mean value. Like if you are measuring the length, you should, if you are having a set of observations for this length AB, like 180 meters, 170 meters, 160 meters and so on, you should determine the precision of that mean of that value for the set of observations. So that can be done by variance or standard deviation and standard error also. So variance is given by sigma square equal to So this is the formula for measuring the variance, and you know standard deviation is root of variance given by sigma, and there is one more term standard error which indicates the limits of error. So that is nothing but sigma by root n, where n is the number of observations you made. Like for AB, if you had measured like 5, so n is 5 measurements. So based on this, you can tell the precision of those set of observations. If suppose the actual length of AB is 180 meters and you had made like 4-5 observations and they are 179 meter, 178, 180 and 181 meter, and some other person also made 5 measurements for this distance AB. So one he found out as 180 meters and another is very different, 170, 190 meters and 198 meters. If you see here, these are very much different from the actual length of 180 meters, but here it is always around this 180 meters. So this is more precise, and that can be determined by this variance or standard error, standard deviation, etc. So there is a difference between precision and accuracy. So accuracy tells how close the value is to the true value. If the true value is located at this point, graphically I am representing, if the true value is close to this point, then it is accurate. So this precision means how scattered the values are. So if you have different values like this and you have another set of different values like this, so this is more precise than this set of observation. Suppose you have different errors, like how to find out the combination of these errors, what is the final error value. So the total error is given as E1 square plus E2 square plus E3 square plus so on. Like suppose you are measuring A, B and B to C, and here you have an error E1 and here you have an error E2. What will be the total error of AC? That can be determined by this equation here. Suppose they are measuring 3 angles of the triangle. Each of them have a standard error of plus or minus 2 seconds. What will be the total error of the sum of these angles? So how can you compute this total error? So we can use this equation. So that is equal to root of 2 square plus 2 square plus 2 square. So you have root of 12. So that is approximately plus or minus 3.5 seconds. Next we'll see about weights. So weightage is nothing but how much trustworthy that data is. Suppose you measured A to B, how much trustworthy your measurement of AB is. Suppose you have an inexperienced surveyor measuring AB distance as, let us say, X meters, and you have a very experienced surveyor who never makes mistakes and he measures it as Y meter. So obviously this will have more weightage over this one because this is more trustworthy, and this weightage also depends on this weather conditions, etc. If it is a very calm weather and you measure it, that will have more weightage, that is more trustworthy than what you measure in bad weather or during rain, etc. So suppose you had measured one angle A and one you found out as 51 degree due in a very calm weather. So that you gave a weightage of 2. This is usually given by experience, this weightage, and based on the circumstances. And another measurement during bad weather you found out as 54 degrees. That you gave just a weight of 1. So what will be the actual angle of A, or in other words weighted mean? So that is equal to 51 degree into 2 plus 54 degree by 2 plus 1. So if you solve this, it will be 52 degrees. So this is your weighted mean, or you can also call it the most probable value of angle A. Suppose you are making 2 sets of observation for this angle A by a person, by 2 persons. And so person A tries to measure the angle of A like 5 times. So he found out that it was 48 degree 2 times, and other observation he found out to be 47 degree, and other 2 observations he found out to be 46 degree. And similarly person B, when he found out that it is 49 degree. Like person B made only 3 observations and he found out it is 49 degree once, 48 degree once, and 47 degree once. Now you want to know the weightage of this set of observation and the weightage of this set of observations. So here the weightage is like, you can give a weightage of 5 here. It is just the sum of all the weights. So the weightage of weighted arithmetic mean for a single measurement. So that is equal to the sum of weights itself. Suppose you find the arithmetic mean here. So it is nothing but 48 degree into 2 plus 47 degree into 1 plus 46 degree into 2 by 5. So if you solve this, you will get 47 degree, and you can tell the weight of this is the sum of weights. So 47 degree of weightage 5 by person A. And here if you find the weighted mean, so 49 into 1 plus 48 into 1 plus 47 into 1 by 3. If you solve that, you will get 48 degree, and the weightage is 3. So for person B, it is 48 degree of weightage 3. So by these two, you can again find out the weighted arithmetic mean if you want to. So this is about finding out the weightage of weighted arithmetic mean of observations for a single measurement. So that is equal to the sum of weights itself. Now there are some other rules also. So if you have two or more quantities which you want to add or subtract algebraically, then the weightage of this sum is, it is equal to the reciprocal of sum of reciprocal of individual weights. Suppose you are measuring an angle alpha and the weight is W1, and you are measuring an angle beta whose weightage is W2. What is the weightage of the angle alpha plus beta or alpha minus beta? So that is equal to reciprocal of sum of reciprocal of individual weights. That is nothing but 1 by W1 plus 1 by W2. And similarly, if you have three angles, let us say gamma of weight W3, so alpha plus beta plus gamma, the weightage is nothing but 1 by W1 plus 1 by W2 plus 1 by W3. So this was also one of the question asked in GATE exam. Then suppose you have a factor, like you measured a angle alpha with weightage W1, let us say W1 equal to 2. Now you want to know the weight of a factor of this angle of let us say it is 3 alpha. Then the weightage is nothing but weight of that quantity by square of factor. So that is equal to weight of quantity is W1 by square of factor. Here it is 3 square. So it is 2 by 3 square. So 2 by 9 is the weightage of 3 alpha. And suppose it is 1 by 3 alpha here. So it will be here 1 by 3 the whole square. And suppose you have a constant added to an angle. Suppose angle alpha, the weightage is W1, and you have a constant added or subtracted to this angle alpha, 180 degree minus alpha. Then the weightage remains unchanged. It is W1 itself. So this is all about errors and weights.